Hey guys, Savage Joy here with Real Progressives. I am back from my 2-week medical hiatus. First of all, I want to tell you guys thank you so much for all the love and messages and emails and texts and everything like that. It means the world to me. It's been amazing. Surgery went well. I'm back and I am savage as ever. So tonight's guest is actually a really awesome fellow from the UK who does political live streams in London, right?
Yeah, London, that's correct.
Awesome. So this is Connor Kavanagh. You can find him on YouTube under his show, which is called the Kavernacle. And I put it in the description if you guys want to know how it's spelled. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's really no trouble. I appreciate it a lot more because I've seen you had a couple quite prominent people on this show, and my channel is pretty small and still growing at the moment. So yeah, I really appreciate having me on.
Absolutely. It's, you made a video that just spoke to me. It was so amazing. And it kind of started blowing up, and I had a couple people send it to me, and they're like, "You need this guy on your show."
Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, I fucking do." I watched it, and I was like, "Oh my God, it's so great!" And you guys, actually, Mark, if you could take the link I put in the group chat and put it in the chat, that would be amazing. So you did a video about how Bernie would be the best choice for America.
Yeah.
And can you just kind of touch on, as someone in the UK, can you touch on why you would say that?
Yeah, sure. So coming from a European perspective and a British perspective, our politics is a lot different. So you have a lot of hysterical people in America calling all Democrats leftists, and it's quite amusing coming from the UK when your Democratic Party really resembles something more like the Tory Party in the UK, just because of how left our politics has been shifted through the ages, and we obviously are a lot older as a country, which is fair enough as well. But yeah, so for example, Bernie proposing universal healthcare is something we've had in this country since 1948. So you can see how backwards America is in that regard, and it's not that our countries are so different in a lot of ways, but I think America hasn't been brought to its knees in a way like this country has. So in World War II, our economy and our country in general was absolutely devastated. And even though America and Britain had similar casualties, I think it's about 400,000 each. Obviously, as a proportion of the population, it's a lot bigger to have that many British young men dead and many more injured. And we were bombed from 1940 for about a year. And then we're bombed again by like V rockets and stuff. So it really terrorized the country. So what the Labour government that came in, so what your viewers may not know is that Winston Churchill, our great Prime Minister, was actually voted out of office before the war was over. And, he's seen as this heroic figure in the world, saying stand up to Hitler. But people, he was quite reviled because he's an elitist figure. His dad was prominent in the Tory party. He's from an elite background. So his government was voted out, and this Labour government was voted in, the Attlee government. And they introduced all these social reforms in the just after the war to just be like, we've gone all through these things and we need these socialist reforms just to benefit the country. You shouldn't die if you don't have money to go to the doctor, essentially. And that's a landmark government we had in our case. Whereas in America, because you benefited so heavily off both world wars, it's just been like, the American way is the best way. The capitalist way is the best way. Capitalism equals freedom, and we don't need to change anything. And, it's just a different mindset. And because you've just gone from strength to strength as a country and become the most powerful country in the history of the world, I think a lot of the time it's lost being like, we need some introspection and think about how we're flawed as a country rather than we're the best, we're the wealthiest. Because it doesn't matter if you're the wealthiest, if the UN, which they said lately, that the US has some of the worst poverty in the developed world. And in terms of Bernie Sanders, for me, I think he's more socialist than he lets on, but just what he's saying just makes complete sense in the context of European and even global politics in a lot of ways, because he just says the things that's normal here is seen as radical and what people say communist in the US, which is just very interesting to me. And that's why I thought my perspective might have been a bit helpful, because we've grown up in a country where even my parents weren't even born before we had a national health service. So that's how old it is. And
Wow.
that's generally my point of view on it.
Yeah, and that's really fascinating because being so heavily involved in Bernie's movement, we do see those posts all the time. Like, I live in the UK, I live in, wherever, and we have universal health care. And I look at America and I'm like, what is wrong with you? Why don't you have this? And it's very hard for people who have it to say, how could I survive without it? So as far as going to the hospital and things, how does it work there? Do you guys pay copays or anything like that, or is it just all free?
Okay, so you have general taxation, income tax, which funds a lot of social programs, but you also have a national insurance tax, which funds a lot of things like your pension, for example. But it also goes into healthcare. And if people aren't, what happens is sometimes, there's not enough money from the national insurance, like taxes, so you put more money from general taxes into the NHS. And that's how it's funded. So you pay into this system and, there is a special tax for it, but there's also part of your general taxes as well. And, and that means you just you get registered for your GP or your local doctors or hospital, whatever, and you just walk in and you get seen. So I have been very lucky. I haven't really had many health scares, but I remember I thought I broke my wrist when I was playing football, and I just went in. I waited for about 2.5 hours. I got seen. They gave me an X-ray and they said, nothing was broken, and that's it. I just went off, no bill or anything.
That pains me. I have $3,000 coming in the mail any day, and I'm just like, damn, like. It's so bad here, and that's with insurance. It's such a racket.
And it's what Bernie says is that you guys pay more for healthcare than we do in general, and it's more expensive at the end, and that's why it's so ineffective. Because even I think he was talking about a Koch brothers study that said universal healthcare would be more cost effective in the long run, and that's the Koch brothers saying that from their own think tank. So it's pretty amazing.
Oops.
Yeah.
That exactly. Kind of backfired for them.
Yeah.
What about prescriptions?
Yeah, so in general, you can get them socialized, but you do pay as well, and it's subsidized, so it's not like super expensive. So I think I've only done it once. I think I paid about £4 or something just for some eardrops, just because I had an ear infection or something from holiday. So I think it can be a bit more expensive, but it is subsidized, which I know it's happened sometimes in some cases in America from like Obamacare and stuff. You do get your medicine health subsidized sometimes, but yeah, I think it's generally a lot cheaper. But that is one area where you will pay a bit of money.
Okay, I think that's still worth it.
Yeah, well, if you get everything else free, like my granddad's pretty ill at the moment, and just he's in and out of hospital all the time, getting these really expensive surgeries, and then he's not getting a massive bill that's bankrupting him at the end of the day. So I think it's worth it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And stress about medical bills and stuff just exacerbates any kind of physical trauma anyone is going through. As far as healthcare goes, a lot of times, and mainly you hear this about Canada, but a lot of times people say, well, they can get their healthcare for free, but they have to wait 3 years to have the surgery, and then it's not quality when they have it.
Yeah.
Can you touch on that?
Well, what the problem is in both Canada, so I don't know if there's this veteran from England called Harry's Last Stand was his Twitter username. He fought in World War II, but he brought to light a lot of what they're doing in Canada. Basically, the right wing in both these countries are cutting funding for their national health services, and the problems mainly stem from that rather than the healthcare being bad. So we've had a Tory government in this country since 2010. We've only had Labour in power during Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, and then before that, it wasn't since I think 1976 or something. So people make the argument that Tony Blair and that administration is more like Conservative anyway. So we haven't had a proper socialised government for ages, and it's just been cuts and cuts to the NHS for ages. And in some instances, it can get bad. Like the waiting times for certain things. It's not like if you're going to die tomorrow, they're going to be like, yeah, you got to wait 3 weeks for your thing. You know, you will get seen, but there is some more specialized things. So mental health stuff, you can be on a long waiting list for that. General operations that you need for stuff that's not life threatening, it can get pretty bad. But at the same time, if you really need it, and like I said, it's called a walk-in center, so it's just A&E. So you just walk in and you get seen for the most part. If you can stick out the wait, when the wait is probably between 2 and 4, maybe a bit longer hours. But if you're not going all the time, it's not really a big deal. Like for me, I've been once, and that's fine for me to pay. But yeah, if people are attacking British healthcare and Canadian healthcare, it's more because of an effort by the right wing to cut it, rather than it's just failing as an idea, really, because that's what the problem is. And you know, in this country, I'll give a bit of anecdotal experience. One of my friends at university was very disabled, and then she received a big cut for the money that she needed to pay a carer, and she needed a carer full time. But that's not because the system's not working. That's because the right wing in this country are cutting funding for it, and that's what I want to get out there. So yeah, you do get examples where it's bad, but I think America might be similar as well. So I don't think it's a great argument against universal healthcare. And what people say, if your healthcare is so great at the moment, in their opinion, you don't have to wait. Well, I hope that translates when you get universal healthcare, and you'll have the best healthcare in the world when it's universal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you guys also have free college?
Yeah, so we haven't had free college for I think the last 30 years. My dad went to university, and it was more a rare thing back then, and he got paid to go to university. They gave him money to go to university, which was crazy back then. But what happened is the Tories started making it more like you have to pay for it, and then the Blair government, you had to pay even more. So I paid about £9,000 a year for my undergrad, and £7,000, £7,000 for my master's degree, which in compared to America, it's not the worst, because I'm probably going to pay that off if I got a decent job in my 30s and stuff. It's not going to follow me around forever, but it still has things like you get interest rates and everything. So, and because we have a right-wing government who aren't really committed to stopping it rising all these costs, yeah, it probably will be more than what I've got at the moment. And it is sort of following in America's footsteps and making college way too expensive. But what the problem is in this country as well, is I think it's different in America. Pretty much everyone goes to university now. Everyone. Like, you don't have to be super bright. You don't have to be upper class. You can be any class and pretty much go to uni, because they'll give you the loans and everything. But at the end of the day, and one thing they do, if you don't make over £21,000 a year, you don't have to start paying it back. And if you don't make that for 20 years, you never have to pay it back. So if you are in a low income job for most your life after uni for the next couple of decades, the debt just gets written off. You don't have to pay it back.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Do you guys pay interest on your phone?
Yeah, we do, and it's a bit of like a racket, like you're saying in America with the healthcare. It's just private companies get involved, and you have to pay a fair bit of interest, which is annoying. But it's not like, you know, so much I'd have to pay like double. Like I'd end up paying 100,000 for my loans and stuff. I think it's bad, but at the same time, the quicker you start paying it off, I think the less it's going to affect you. So so typically university graduates make a bit more. So hopefully you'd be making above 21,000 in your first job, hopefully. So then you'd start paying it back straight away.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah,
because here I worked for providing student loans in the state of Pennsylvania, and it was almost 8%.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so you have people taking out $200K to become a doctor.
Yeah,
8% on that. I mean, they're never going to pay it off as long as they live. Never.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, have you been listening to what Andrew Yang's been saying lately about it? It's quite interesting. How he's saying he's going to sort of he said, I think he's saying the college, the US government won't lose a lot of money, or there won't be a lot of money lost if he writes off these loans. So he's saying that's like the logical thing to do with everything, like just write it off, because no one's going to pay that back anyway. And I think he's sort of making the point, no one's really going to lose money to this. It's just like a scheme by the universities to just increase their profits. And he said it's not going to make the government any less money or anything. So he's been interested on this whole thing about college and everything. So I think even though I don't support him, like I think he's a voice worth hearing. I'm glad he's in the debates now.
Yeah, his whole stance on UBI worries me because
Yeah.
did the UK ever try UBI?
So I don't know what America's like, but we have unemployment benefits and everything, so you can get money, and I think it is more than 12. It is more than 12,000 a year. I'm pretty sure if you claim the whole benefit, if you can't get a job, if you have a disability, so it's not. People don't fall through the cracks. Hopefully, that's the purpose of the system. But you don't just be like, no matter what your social standing, here's £12,000. I don't know what the ratio of that in British pounds is. Maybe £10,000, maybe 9,000. Yeah, but it's never been tried here. It's an interesting argument, like Andrew Yang was saying about how it affects everything. Really, like if you have a little bit of a safety net like that, no matter what, you're more likely to try stuff. So in his opinion, it would make capitalism more designed in a way he thinks to be appropriate, like a nice free market. Like I think Bernie said when he became mayor of Burlington in 1981, he said, they asked him if he was capitalist, and he said, like small scale free market if it's working properly. Like I'm not against, but I'm generally not a capitalist and stuff. So I think that's what Andrew Yang's trying to argue, that this basic income will help as well. And I think it's a kind of interesting argument. But Bernie, I'm not aware Bernie's arguing for it. I don't think he is.
No.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the studies I've read when they've tried UBI in Finland and such, the problem is it's like, oh, $1,000 each. This is so rad. Everybody gets $1,000. This is awesome. Yeah. Well, what they don't typically tell you is they cut Social Security, they cut disability, they cut unemployment, they cut all social services. So let's say someone's disabled and they make $1,400. Well, now they only make $1,000.
Oh,
so
right. Yeah.
It's actually harder to live. And I think people are just so hyped with the idea of like free money. And Bernie's I'm guessing it's my teammate Steve, someone under our group name, just brought up a good point. Bernie is actually in favor of a federal job guarantee, which is so much better. Do you guys have that in the UK?
So is it that you'll get a job opportunity no matter what, or someone will offer you a job? Is it something like that?
Right, essentially.
Yeah. No, we don't have something like that. So it's an interesting idea, definitely.
It's a really great way to also do the Green New Deal, because you have people without jobs and you're guaranteeing them jobs. So what do? You create them, and we can create millions of jobs if we go green. What is it like in the UK as far as green? Do you have, are you guys green friendly, or are you transitioning?
So I think the UK is a lot better on these issues. I think we ran, I think it was the whole country ran on renewable energy for a day. We've been testing it out and stuff. And in my own experience, there's a lot of electric car use and just electric stations to charge your car and everything. And I think in general, it's a fair bit better than the US. And we also don't pollute as much as well, because the US is one of the biggest polluters in the world, along with China and countries like Brazil, which add to the climate change, and other industrialized countries like India. But I think it's a bit better. We also have not that it really is, it's not as good, but a significant majority of the country actually vote for the Green Party. But because of our parliamentary system, we only have one Green MP. But if you would total the people voting for these parties, it would actually be, I think, Conservative, Labour Party, and then UKIP, and then the Green Party. But because of our system, they're not represented properly. So there is a large Green element in this country. And if it was fair, that's all of the parties it would be like. But instead, it is actually Conservative, Labour, Lib Dems, who don't have a lot of support. So it is a point to our system. But I think a lot of people here are a bit more green conscious, I guess. And it's a bigger thing. We just had, I don't know if you saw it, that big march for climate change. I'm sure America's doing similar things. But we had one in London with all the school kids, which is nice to see. And I think what is different about our country is because I think basic education in the UK is a lot better about these issues. I think everyone sort of learns about it, and it's not politicized as much. So you have in America the president of the United States, for one thing, not believing in global warming. Whether that's because he's genuinely stupid or he has lots of financial interest to not believe in it is really up for debate. But then you have nearly a whole party who don't take it seriously. And I think what's different about America and the UK is that you can't get away in the UK, even if you're a right winger, with being openly stupid. Like, you can't just say, climate change doesn't exist. The debate would be about how much is too much about changing the economy. Not the debate wouldn't be this doesn't exist, let's do nothing, versus someone be like, no, it's going to destroy our planet, let's do something. So I think that's the difference in the UK. And it's a various reasons in the US. You have a strain of Christianity which is pretty much insane, like fundamentally insane, and there's lots of reasons for that. And then you also have a country, and it's kind of correlates. The people who love this Christianity, who are insane, also despise educated people. So it's not a great recipe for helping with climate change when you have, and a lot of these people is white working class in like Midwest states and stuff like that. So it's not helping with their prospects, and they get fed a lie. And I touched on it in one of my latest videos. I think in Wales we used to have a load of coal mines and stuff, like whole towns set up for coal mines, and then we just stopped using coal, and the coal ran out, and that was it. The jobs all just went. But the difference is that was in like 1930s and stuff, whereas in America, you'll have this sort of problem because of what Trump's been doing, trying to prop up the coal industry. You'll have this problem in the modern age, and I don't even know what that would look like. And something Andrew Yang touched on is that all these jobs go, which he was talking more in regards to technology, improving automated systems. But even when jobs go like this, because of the awareness of everyone, because we're all connected now, he said it could look pretty ugly. And we had the Luddites in Britain during the Industrial Revolution. We'd go and smash up technology and things. He was saying you can imagine something similar in the US, but it's even worse because the way we're replacing jobs and everything is going to put a lot of people out of work. And these people, a lot of them aren't necessarily bad people for believing Trump. It's their lives, and they're going to find themselves out of a job at some point because it's just not sustainable. And I think that's the difference of the UK and the US. I think we've at least tried to move on a bit from that, and you can't get away with just being outright stupid. No one's going to buy it. And I think that's why a UK Trump could never happen. Because the working class hate the poor, and most people hate stupid people, and I think that often they hate both of them. So you couldn't have a UK Trump.
Yeah, that's a really great point.
Yeah,
I remember it was at least a year or two ago, but I believe it was London. It was somewhere in the UK. They stated that Trump was not welcome.
It was Scotland because he has golf courses there. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so amazing.
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
Just to touch on that a tiny bit, I think Americans are unaware how much British people, even if they had agreed with his politics, they just don't like him because he's just so stupid. And that's why you have someone like Nigel Farage who gets a bit more support, because he's actually, even though I find him quite insidious, he's a very smart guy and he's a good speaker. And he's very good at motivating his people, and he's very good at painting himself as someone who's lower class and like for the people. And you can kind of buy it, even though he is a wealthy man himself. Whereas Trump, that's why I'm saying UK Trump can happen, because no one here would believe that someone like that could be fighting for them, and someone who's so stupid could really help their problems. So I think that's the difference in our countries.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I believe that. What about, like, I know growing up, one of my first, I didn't grow up in a very political family at all. And one of my first exposures was Tony Blair.
Yeah.
How is he regarded?
People hate Tony Blair in this country. So I made a video on it about just a little, like a mini documentary on the Iraq War, talking about how people really love Tony Blair. But because of his decision to involve us in the Iraq War, people really hate Tony Blair. And genuinely, if he didn't do that, I think he would still be regarded as a good prime minister, maybe one of the best in recent times. But that is just such disaster. Like, for someone who's meant to be from the Labour Party, allying himself with George Bush, when France and Germany and other European countries don't want to join this alliance. And when you go back and look at the evidence, it's so clear that all this stuff was such garbage. And this is anecdotal as well. Like, my professor, he said, Chinese Whispers, he said what his mentor was one of the experts that Tony Blair consulted about the Iraq War. And he asked these experts, he's like, do we have to go do this? Is Saddam Hussein like another Hitler? And they're like, no, he's pretty much traditional in this regard. The British government have backed in the past, and then he's like, oh, but Saddam's uniquely evil, and that sort of exposes his thinking. Like it sort of he like even got caught up in the rhetoric the American public was sold, and that is why he's absolutely hated in this country, and people have taken his government to court about it. You know, to say like all the soldiers who died in that war. And we're really bad for this. Like lately, we've just been charging some people who committed war crimes in Northern Ireland, but generally the military are quite protected in this regard. But yeah, everyone hates Tony Blair. Like socialist people, working class people, no matter what their political affiliation. Right wing people obviously hate him as well. But one thing I won't let people escape: Tony Blair couldn't have got the Iraq War without the Tory Party, because most of the Labour Party voted against it. All the Tory Party voted for it. So even though he was a Labour Prime Minister, I don't accept that it's Labour's fault that the Iraq War happened when the Tory Party propped up all this warmongering he did. So they both share the blame. But even when David Cameron was Prime Minister, he acted like he didn't vote for it, and Theresa May as well, and they did, and they're just as guilty as he is, in my opinion.
What about Theresa May? I've seen some comments. I mean, first of all, her dancing makes me smile. Oh. I admit it. Well, I guess you call it dancing. But what is your take on Theresa May?
Well, do you mind if I just explain what Brexit really is? Like all this
sideshow.
Okay, so Theresa May voted to remain in the EU, right? But she kept it pretty quiet. It's sort of like a House of Cards situation. She kept it pretty quiet. Boris Johnson broke ranks with his friend David Cameron and said he wanted to leave, even though he's never really leaned that way significantly in his UK political life. And basically what happened, it's a Tory leadership contest under the guise of Brexit negotiations. And this is why she won't give up power, because it's literally the Tory party fighting itself. So you have one side led by people like Boris Johnson and Michael Gove, and egged on with people like Nigel Farage, who's in UKIP. And they're fighting centrist Tories. But then even a lot of centrist Tories don't really like Theresa May. So she's hated by both sides of her party for different reasons. And also, it gets more complicated that the Tory party paid the DUP, which is the Northern Ireland Protestant party, to prop them up because they lost their majority in the 2017 election. So they hate her a lot of the time as well, because she's not doing enough for them. So basically, all her allies really hate her. And then just generally, everyone else just would hate her anyway because she's a Tory. So SNP, the Scottish Nationalist Party, the Labour Party, Green Party, even the Lib Dems and everything, they all hate her anyway. And this in general, I think you get most people generally don't like her because she's doing such a bad job. The only people who would like her, but not really, they'd happily see her be replaced by Boris Johnson, are people who want a no-deal Brexit because they think, I don't know, because she's doing such a bad deal, that's what might happen. But generally, I think her and David Cameron, her, because she's taken the brunt of it, I think they would be remembered as two of the worst prime ministers in the last maybe 150 years. And I don't think you'll find anyone who's really got a great thing to say about Theresa May, because she hasn't done anything good. And she also had the Windrush scandal under hers, which is kind of like the stuff you've had with ICE. It's like where people who've been living here their whole lives, they came over after the war to help rebuild England, are being deported back to places like Jamaica and people places in the West Indies, which they haven't been since they were children. And that's also happened under her watch. So, and the Tory, we call it the same Tory government because it's just continuation of them, even though she's the new Prime Minister, because she was David Cameron's Home Secretary. And the damage they've done overall to this country, I don't think they'll be let off lightly in the history books, to be honest.
Right on.
Yeah.
What about, what are your thoughts on Jeremy Corbyn?
Yeah, so this is pretty complicated for me because, like we were saying earlier, I am a lot younger. And I think when you're a young person, you can probably agree with me, your political evolution changes a lot. So when Jeremy Corbyn first came on the scene, I didn't actually like him. Not really at all. I probably even consider myself more of a centrist. I'll say this is when I was about 18, 19. So I'm 23 now. And I didn't like him, but I always agreed with what he said about foreign policy, like about the Saudis, about Israel and things like this. I always agreed with that, but I just didn't think his ideas were super sustainable. And I thought he had a bit of an ego about him because he would bring up these things sometimes at irrelevant places, and I still think it's bad. So at the opening of a investigation into anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, he compared Israel to ISIS, which on the surface sounds really bad. And the point was, not all Israelis support Netanyahu and his actions. The same way not all Muslims support ISIS. But it just was stupid to bring that up when you're investigating anti-Semitism. So there's problems like that. But yeah, generally I didn't like him. And then I think Brexit just really turned me around, just because I was like, at least, even though he doesn't like the EU, even with the referendum, he didn't really campaign that hard to stay in because he doesn't like it. Because traditionally, socialists don't like the EU, and I think that's a different. Because I think that's what differentiates Corbyn and Bernie. I think Corbyn is hardcore, old school socialist. I think Bernie isn't, because I think there's something in America. I don't think you can be like Corbyn for various different reasons, but I think especially the context of Bernie's upbringing, you know, being a mayor in like a rural place as well, whereas Jeremy Corbyn's from London and very industrialized, poor places and stuff. I think it's a bit different coming from a city how socialist you are, because obviously Karl Marx had envisioned in Marxist revolution, it's mainly carried out by the industrial workers and it's focused on the industrial sector really. But I really turned around on him, and the election in 2017, he was really great at campaigning. Like everyone said, why couldn't he have done this in the EU referendum? Because he was so amazing at it. And then just generally, as I've gotten older now, and Theresa May's government has been such a joke, I'm just like really in for Corbyn now, and I never used to be. Mainly because, like with any sort of figure like that, he got a bit of a cult following early on with young people, and I thought people just took him easy without really dissecting his politics, and that kind of annoyed me because, you know, wanting to be like not mainstream and just take a step back, I didn't really want to support him. But yeah, now I'm all in on him, and I would happily leave the EU if he became prime minister, because I don't think that's actually going to happen. But staying in the EU and having a Tory party for like another 10 years, I wouldn't want that. I'd rather leave and him become the prime minister. Because just one more thing, socialist arguments to leave the EU actually make sense. And I don't know if you saw that bus with saying we'll save money for the NHS if we leave the EU that Boris Johnson was peddling. But basically, that's a legitimate argument. But the one thing that made it so stupid is that the only people who wanted Brexit were right-wing millionaires, and literally everyone else didn't. So I think that's what shows you everything. Like, that's not the makeup of the population who voted Brexit, but everyone who led the Brexit campaign were right-wing millionaires. And I think if people needed to look at that and be like, you know, who really cares about us? You know, socialists like Corbyn and the Labour Party, or right-wing millionaires, and only a fraction of them at that, because the Tory party was split on Brexit. But yeah, overall, I really like Corbyn now. I like Bernie a bit more, if I'm honest. I don't know why that is, but I just do, because I love Bernie's story. It's like a Hollywood movie. Like I was reading, because I read his book, like growing up in New York, poor, and he's talking about like his favorite player being like Jackie Robinson and playing like all these games in the streets, and then being like, is it the president of CORE at university? Like I think that's pretty amazing, and like leading all these like sit-ins. And then he was there when Martin Luther King made his "I Have a Dream" speech. Like I think there's going to be a really good movie about him when I think when he's passed on and stuff. I think people will remember him really fondly for all these things, because it's just amazing. You know, I'm 23. He must have been maybe 18, 19, 20 when he's doing all these things. It's pretty amazing. So I like Bernie a bit more.
And I'm so glad that this time he's opening up more about his family and the Holocaust and things like that, because I understand why he didn't open up more on that, because the anti-Semitism against him from Dems is so bad. I mean, I just take screenshots nonstop of just the ugliest stuff. So it's really beautiful that he started opening up with that stuff. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I saw that a lot with Jeremy Corbyn too. He's just getting slayed as this anti-Semite. Yeah. So it kind of, on that note, what is your take, being outside of America, looking in on the Ilhan Omar?
Yeah, so we have a similar situation right now with Jeremy Corbyn, where the media have been absolutely non-stop about it. Like I reported it for our university magazine back in 2016 about the anti-Semitism debate. It's been non-stop, and basically, you'll probably be aware of this, when you're so far left, like for example the Soviet Union as well, there is a lot of people who will start using anti-Semitic tropes about Jews controlling everything. Mm-hmm. And they get so passionate, and it happens in a lot of Islamic countries as well. They get so passionate about the Palestinians, they start really buying into these anti-Semitic tropes. And I think that's one legit criticism of Omar, because talking about money when she's criticizing Jews, I don't think it's the best thing. I think she quoted that song lyric all about the Benjamins, baby. I think that's not really helpful. And I've heard a lot of Jews say, even though they support her, that's something that she probably shouldn't have done. But at the same time, yeah, like many Jews have said, she's not an anti-Semite. Same with Corbyn, but the pushback they get from people in the Labour Party and in America, the Dem Party, is really depressing. And I think it speaks to how much power Israel's lobbying has in the West, because Israel is such a vital part of US foreign policy and a British foreign policy. Like, we have to remember who helped found this country in the first place, like the Balfour Declaration in 1917. It's the British government, and then the American government really helped a lot of them found this. And I don't really want to get into, like, should Israel, the founding of it and everything, because we don't really talk about that in regards to this. But I think what their defense is now a lot of the time, like Netanyahu and everything, is just to slander anyone who criticizes Israel at all as an anti-Semite. And I think because it's so complicated, Jews have had such a hard history in the world, since the fall of the temple by the Babylonians, and then later the Romans. They've never had it easy, and they've been outcasts for a lot of it. And I think that plays in, and obviously the Holocaust and everything, but it plays into a lot of the maybe unwillingness a lot of the time for people to criticize Israel, and a lot of the time for Dems to be like, if Israel give them money or power, they kind of turn away. Like, I remember during the Obama presidency, Netanyahu gave a speech to Congress, and best reception you've ever heard anyone get in Congress. And I think Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks made a really good point. Ilhan Omar saying AIPAC has a disproportionate influence on Congress, and it's like you have to sort of support two countries to be a patriotic American. I think fundamentalist Christians believe in Israel has to exist to bring about the end time of the world, where Jews will actually be killed by God, because, in fundamentalist Christianity, Jews aren't the chosen people, Christians are. And I think that's far more anti-Semitic than saying Israel, which is one of the most powerful countries in the world, has a lot of influence on Western politics, and they have lobbying groups who pay a lot of money to politicians' campaigns, and that's pretty obvious for anyone to see. And just to sum up the irony, didn't they just announce Nancy Pelosi is going to be a big speaker at AIPAC after she led the charge against Omar? So I don't think she's wrong. I don't think Jeremy Corbyn's wrong on this criticism, but because it is a very sensitive issue and the water has been muddied and everything, but I would say leftist anti-Semitism exists and it's a problem and it should be rooted out. But I would also want to say right-wing anti-Semitism is often disguised as something else. Like, I think one of the strongest lobbying groups in America is something like Christians for Israel or something. Something like, it's called something like that. And I would imagine that that's based on a lot of anti-Semitism about the end times or something, because I think it's a really right-wing Christian group. But yeah, I 100% support Omar. And if she bought into these tropes, because she has made mistakes in the past, I was actually having a look at it. She has said some things about Israel that could be considered anti-Semitic. I think people just need to be more careful and not just associate all Jews with money, because that's an old stereotype, and it's really, really not helpful. So being nonchalant using a song lyric that could be interpreted as anti-Semitic, I think that's bad. And I think she's made a great point about Saudi Arabia today, and that's what she's got to keep doing about Israel. And what I find funny, I'm pretty sure, same with Bernie, I'm pretty sure if Bernie was not a Jew, he would be called an anti-Semite as well. And I'm pretty sure if Omar wasn't a Muslim, today she would have been called an Islamophobe for criticizing Saudi Arabia.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
It's just I think the right wing likes to talk about identity politics a lot, but doing stuff like that, it doesn't really help your case that you're all for free speech when you just label something really horrible because they've got a legit criticism against a world power.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I remember in 2016, Bernie actually turned down speaking at AIPAC and went to Utah and gave a rally about what we can do as a people to try and unite Palestinians with Israel and kind of try to bridge the divide. And he got ripped a new one for turning down that AIPAC speech. And I'm like, looking back at it, I'm like, really? Because he was on the right side of history yet again. Yeah,
well, it's interesting just to point, like, I think it's funny that they won't even take someone seriously who is a Jew. And a self-hating Jew is a thing that comes up a lot for people who support Corbyn and Bernie. And I think it's funny that these people think they know about how, Jewish grievances and everything so much so, even though they're not Jews, that they can tell someone that if they don't 100% support the actions of the Israeli government, that they hate themselves, which is pretty crazy to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we kind of see that a lot with Kamala Harris. Like, we see a lot of white middle-aged women telling us we're racist for
Yeah.
not supporting her. And then there's tons of people of color who are never Kamala.
Yeah.
People always try to speak for those they're not.
Yeah. I think it can be hard sometimes because you want to do the right thing, I guess, because these people aren't just being like, I'm horrible, I'm going to smear everyone. They're trying to be, in a lot of ways, helping out, but just because, I don't know, whether it's a lack of critical thinking, they just don't get the point. And like, you know, if so even when I'm talking about these issues a lot of the time, if I'm talking about like problems in the Islamic world as like an atheist, sometimes I take a step back and I'm like, you know, I'm a white person and I'm fairly privileged in terms of the world. Maybe I should take a step back and read some other perspectives before talking about this because, you know, my insight, like if I'm talking about like black issues and, you know, there's sort of things you can say that are facts, but I think a lot of the time the perspective of people you've got to get into. So like Kamala Harris, you should be listening to the people who are African American and are saying they never support her, and that's who you should be listening to. You shouldn't be saying, you know, I think you're just on a hunch. I think racism plays into why you won't support her. The same way a lot of people would say, Hillbots, as they're called, would say you're sexist for not supporting Hillary Clinton because you know we want the first woman president and Bernie Sanders is a man, but we don't want a man again. That's irrelevant because you support who's the best candidate.
Yeah, we don't want another white man. Beto announced.
Oh yeah, but yeah, the same people who say that love him, which is quite funny.
Oh my God. He is such a tool. Oh my God.
Like I didn't realize how much I hated him until he announced. And what it is because during the Ted Cruz campaign, I gave him a pass. I'm like, it's Ted Cruz. Here's some guy, and he's trying to win Texas for the first time since Lyndon Johnson or something, like for Democrats. Yeah, so I'll give him a pass. You know, if he meets with AIPAC, if he doesn't really come down hard on a lot of the issues, I'll be like, okay, he's from Texas. But now he's running for president in a field with all these people, and he's the least progressive of them all. And you know, they expose him for his like Republican ties and everything. Like it's cringy because I know he's going to get destroyed, and I really wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the first people to drop out. Because
Really?
yeah, because I think I was actually so surprised by. I know this is a little anecdotal as well, but the reaction on Twitter to Beto was really surprising at how many people absolutely hated him. Like, because yeah, because when he was running against Ted Cruz, everyone loved him, and I was like, oh, this is a bit annoying for Bernie. We've got someone else that's quite popular. And then I was reading on Twitter all the comments, just not even on Bernie sites, just on news articles. It's like, yeah, we don't want him, or like, what has he even got to offer? And then I think someone retweeted a funny video of just a smaller YouTuber doing like the big hand signs, like Beto does, to seem like he's making a point. And he seems really disingenuous with his speeches because he's so over the top, and he's saying all this like stuff that means nothing. It reminds me of someone like Ronald Reagan or something, or even Obama. I think that's a really good comparison. But Obama at least went into more depth, and he's a great speaker. Beto's not a great speaker, and he's hyperactive, and he's going to be out of his depth totally when he's running. Because what has he got to run on? What's he going to say to people? I've done X, Y, and Z. He's not. He lost the Senate, and I think was he even a congressman? I don't even know what he's done. Like that's how much his record doesn't stick with me. I don't know what he's really done before.
And yeah, sorry. He's passed one bill, and it was to rename a courthouse.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's why I think because when I listen to someone like Andrew Yang, who I didn't know before a couple of weeks ago, I'm like, this guy has stuff to back him up. Like he's given me all the facts, he's given me all the data, whether I agree with it or not. He brings an interesting point of view. Beto O'Rourke talking like Obama. When you've got a field of people like Elizabeth Warren or even like Cory Booker and Kamala Harris who've set out what their agenda is, this is how we'll do it, and this is why I'm good because I've been doing this in the Senate, or I passed these many things, or I'm Bernie Sanders, I've been in around various positions in politics, I know how to get things done. I don't think when it holds up to scrutiny, I don't think Beto will be very good, and I think the establishment will attach itself to Kamala Harris or Cory Booker rather than Beto. I think there's just I don't think he could beat Trump either. Like I don't think Trump's gonna have it easy this time, and I think he probably should lose. But I think Beto's not going to speak to Trump voters, and the same way I think Bernie's quite smart in the way he doesn't really demonize a lot of them, and he goes to these places to talk to them. And I think a bit like FDR, it's more like, this isn't left versus right, this isn't socialist versus capitalist. It's like, this is what the country needs, I'm going to do it, and it's going to help you. Yeah, and you should support that, rather than Beto talking about like this, you know, the stuff about all this American exceptionism stuff and what a patriotic image of America is. That's not going to help anyone. And what happens is what I said in my latest video, I think, is that if you elect someone like that, I think the Republican Party is going to be on its knees if you elect someone like Bernie and people like AOC, just exposing them like time after time, exposing this whole system. If you elect someone like Beto, I think he's going to uphold the system, and I think that paves the way for the Republican Party to make a big comeback, because he's going to be so hated.
Absolutely, and that's why I have trepidation about him entering the race, just because there are people, like, it's so frustrating, the people that are like, he's well, first of all, no, he's not handsome. And I know it's up to, no. Yeah, okay, it's hot to be in a band and to skateboard, but no.
Yeah.
But, you know, yesterday he was asked about Medicare for all. He did not vote for HR 676 last time. He still is not supportive of it.
Yeah.
Deal breaker to me. Absolute deal breaker.
Yeah, yeah. Like I was saying, even countries like Cuba have pretty good healthcare, socialized healthcare. They've been under embargo since 1959. And like this country, I don't understand how you can be a young person like him, look to one of the US's biggest allies, the UK, and be like, oh yeah, they've had socialized Medicare or socialized medicine when they were completely bankrupted and destroyed by World War II, and they still had it done. Us in 2020 or 2021, when he becomes president, they can't do it because why? Do you know what I mean? Like, we got to spend more money on war. We got to inflate the budget even more, or give tax rates to billionaires. Like, there's no logical argument. And what I'm happy about with Bernie Sanders is that he's completely changed the conversation, where all these people are supporting it. And Hillary Clinton said it wasn't a feasible idea, and her idea was just make Obamacare a bit better. But now I think, like you're saying, it's a deal breaker to so many people, because people are catching on that when he says Canada, even countries like Cuba, you know, there's no reason Cuba should have it and the US shouldn't. And I think, like, I don't think he has enough policies to even, you know, skirt around that issue. He's going to be forced to back it, and then when he does, he'll look like he's just coming onto it late. And then you already have even the centrist candidates are supporting it. So I think he really doesn't stand a chance, and I think he's going to be totally weak. And I honestly think he will. If Andrew Yang does get a bit prominent in debates, I could see Beto dropping out before Yang easily, because what Yang has, which is surprising, is very big support with the right wing, which is very interesting. Just because if you look at the Joe Rogan comments, I know it's a pretty small audience, but it's really interesting to read them. Be like, I voted for Trump, he screwed me over, never again, Andrew Yang and stuff. And it's like, you see a lot of those comments, and that's really interesting. Like, who's Beto meant to appeal to? Like, I can't understand who would be proudly a Beto supporter. I can understand with even Cory Booker and Kamala Harris, I can understand why you might vote for them. But Beto, I think he's such a centrist leaning right. I don't think there's anyone who really is. Why would Republicans want him as well? I don't understand anyone who would vote for Beto, to be honest. I think he doesn't stand a chance.
Well, you've heard about the whole calf cramping thing, right?
Oh, no, what's that? I might have heard of it when it's explained to me.
You'd know if you did. There was this woman who made some post about, like, Beto's the kind of guy that bangs you so good your calves cramp or some shit. And it became this whole thing about, like, you know, oh, Beto, he makes my calves cramp. So, I mean, like, that's what they're thinking of. Like, they want a heartthrob.
Yeah.
So I made a post that was like, you know, ooh, Medicare for all. Yeah, baby. And I went down and I'm like, okay, this is actually what should make your calves cramp.
Yeah,
like, helping people. But yeah, it's like the whole sex symbol thing with a lot of people. But, you know, my fear is that a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the candidates are just totally not genuine when they say Medicare for all.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Warren has walked it back. Kamala has walked it back. Klobuchar says no, straight up. Booker has walked it back. Bernie's the only one I trust.
Yeah.
Because he's been saying it for 30 years, and also he's actually written the legislation to do it.
Yeah.
So I think it's not just, I think people need to be really, really, really careful.
Yeah.
I don't trust Elizabeth Warren for anything.
Yeah.
I like, as a UK perspective, what did you guys think of Hillary?
Oh, so Hillary Clinton in this country, I think it shares a lot with the rest of America. I don't think Hillary Clinton was particularly liked, and obviously she's not infamous for this, but Bill Clinton's pretty infamous, and Bill Clinton is liked in the UK because he played a really prominent role in solving the troubles in Northern Ireland. So in terms of international stuff, Bill Clinton has helped out the UK, but in general, I think just people really really hated it, and I think people caught on with Bernie Sanders stuff as well, and for someone like Hillary Clinton to the UK, because her policy positions are so normal, I don't think anything really stands out. So she just seems like a corporate robot to a lot of people. But I don't think a lot of people were gutted when Trump won, but I don't think it was a massive, like, earth-shattering shock to a lot of people, because if you're looking from the outside, Hillary Clinton just an extension of the Obama administration, and she looks like a lot of the politicians we have here. Looks like Theresa May, looks like Margaret Thatcher in a lot of ways. And it's just, when you stand for nothing but nice speeches about how great America is and how great it can be under your leadership, and you have no substantive policy to really put forward, I don't think it really catches on with the world. And I think people, for our lack of knowledge of American politics, I think someone you can attach Bernie to is either healthcare, which a lot of people in this country would know about because everyone knows America has really trash healthcare in terms of the funding and everything, and climate change is a big one. So things, because he's so radical on these issues that I think people can be like, that's what he'll do. Same with Trump in a way, because he says, whoa, anti-immigration, you kind of understand what he's about. I don't even think anyone really understood what Hillary Clinton was about in this country. Is a big thing.
Yeah, she was the queen of flip-flopping. It depended what her focus group said that day, essentially. Who do your friends and allies, who do they think America should elect? Do they agree with Bernie?
So I'd say, just because it's based on my own experience, YouTube's something I do pretty privately. I don't think even a lot of people I know I do it. But in terms of my immediate friends, I'd say the people who do follow American politics would only back Bernie, because it's not even so much like you have to like this person. It's just like you say what they stand for, and they'll be like, "Oh, we have that here. Why would you not vote for that?" And I'll be like, "Oh, but this person says this." I'll be like, "Well, that's stupid. Why would you do that? Like, why would you make someone's life worse or not even propose to make it better?" When I think the main point as well, America is the richest country in the world. Like, if poor countries can afford this, there is no argument that rich countries can't. And like I was saying, Britain in the aftermath of World War II, we were the biggest recipient of the Marshall Plan aid and everything, like, completely devastated, and we still was like, this is our priority, giving healthcare to everyone. And I think it also speaks to the American ideology as well, a lot of how capitalism, rich people all worship that it's so hard to make people accept this is just a better way of doing things.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Are you guys allowed to have money in politics?
Yeah, this is always funny. What I talk about the problem quick. There is a problem with money in politics in the UK, but it's not like in the US. It's not like I can go have a look at who funds Theresa May. I can just get that up on a spreadsheet and be like, she received $50,000 from this arms manufacturer. What it is in the UK is that the establishment is generally a bit bigger. So the BBC even makes up part of the establishment. So it's sort of like your revolving door in politics, but it's less obvious. It's pretty more sinister. So Theresa May's husband is a massive shareholder in lots of different things, including a private security force called G4S. And when they get a contract by the Tory government, you're like, I know how that's happened. And then the guy who was a director of the BBC's coverage of the EU referendum politics and the general election 2017, he went to work for Theresa May straight after at a top position. So what it is, it's more like the establishment is who you know, and it's everyone's together. All the lobbyists have friends of friends, and if like the US, if you have you work in the defense department, you might get a good job in the defense industry afterwards. But the problem of actual massive donations affecting how everyone votes, it's not as obvious. And there's been a lot of laws. I think we might have had stricter laws in this country for campaign finance, like back in the late 1800s and stuff. But because we cracked down hard on corruption because elections were just a joke. In this, it's like you could literally drive a bunch of people to the polls, give them loads of beer, and they'd be like, vote for this person. Our democracy was seriously messed up. I think it might go to show you we are a bit of an older country. We've had democracy in some part for a couple hundred years and everything, a lot longer than the US. But I think they really cracked down on it hard in the late 1800s and 1900s. It's not saying it doesn't exist, but it's a lot more sinister and not obvious to the public. And I think the main people, obviously Rupert Murdoch, was it pretty in bed with Tony Blair because his papers, which traditionally spread right-wing propaganda, supported Tony Blair in the election. And he rang up Tony Blair during the deliberation about Iraq and said, if you don't invade Iraq, we ain't supporting you anymore. And that is a big deal in politics in this country when so many older people read the papers for their news. So, like I'm saying, it's not as like in the US, you're like, this guy's funded by big oil, this guy's big pharma. Cory Booker got donations from Jared Kushner's family, so we don't trust him. It's more like you got to look even deeper in the UK to see who people are married to, who people are friends with, and who they appoint to these various positions. But yeah, that's basically it. It is a massive, massive problem, mainly perpetrated by the right wing and some centre people. Like, we just had a new centre party where people left the Tories and Labour called the Independent Group, but they didn't register as a political party. They registered as a private company, so you can't see who funds them. So it's super shady, but most people don't know that. So it's like Independent Group. This is a new political party, yeah, but we can't see who funds it, and that's the massive problem. So money in politics I think it's a problem across all capitalist democracies. But the US is just in a lot of cases every time the absolute worst example, and that goes for healthcare as well. Just the flaws are so obvious in the US. That's why I think it's so insane to most people. Nothing's really done to fix them. Where in the UK, you have to be quite in tune to politics, and then you've got to get rid of your biases, because if you're pro-right wing, a lot of the time, you'll just ignore these things anyway because it's to your benefit, because it helps them control power. So that's our problem with it.
That's a really good point. What is something you would like to leave with our audience? What's something you want to tell us about the UK or tell us, encourage us to look out for?
Yeah, that's a good point. So in terms of, I guess the big issue for us at the moment is Brexit, but just know, like, everyone in the country is sick of Brexit, like, and a lot of people have changed their minds on the whole thing, whether they voted leave and remain, and the legitimate arguments for leaving, which there are some, have been totally undermined because of the way the government has handled Brexit. And like I pointed out earlier, Brexit has just been a sideshow and a smokescreen for an internal conflict in the Tory party. That's why we can't get anything done. It's the right wing just messing around because it's nearly been 3 years and we've barely made any progress, and we're going to have to extend when we're going to leave by. So don't believe all these people like Will of the People, Tommy Robinson, Nigel Farage. Don't believe people like that. Most people are sick of it. Most people just want what's best for them. And like in America, the only similarity to Trump is because people wanted something different. And this country's been screwed over by the right wing for so long. Like, your country's been screwed over by the centrist Democrats and the right wing. They just wanted change and they voted for something like that. And now most people, they want a decision on what's happened. They either want a decision on the final deal or they want another referendum. So just don't believe a lot of the propaganda that everyone in the UK just is supporting the right wing and Tories. Most people are sick of this mess, and just the government's not legitimate. It's just an infighting in the Tory party, and that's what Brexit is. It's nothing more than that. And they threw it on us as a country, and it's all their fault. Tory party are responsible for all this mess we're in right now, and that's what I want to leave everyone on. So Theresa May, one of the worst prime ministers of all time. Don't believe anything different, in my opinion.
And she can't even dance.
Yeah, well, she I don't know if you've seen it or your audience has seen They Live, that film where he puts on the glasses and they're all like these weird robots underneath. That is exactly what Theresa May and people like Hillary Clinton are. They're like the They Live robots, just controlled by money and corporations, and that's all these people are.
That's awesome. That's a great comparison.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Connor.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Yeah. I definitely want to have you again in the future. I'm sure we'll have plenty of updates going on that we can discuss.
Next month is a big one for the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So give your full list of Twitter and YouTube and all that stuff for
Yeah.
the viewers.
So yeah, if you want to find me, mainly is the big one is my YouTube channel. It's just the Kavernacle. Type it in, have a look at some of my videos. I got a new one coming out tomorrow talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So look out for that. I've also got some funny ones coming up, like how The Hobbit is actually a Marxist story and everything. And then I might cover this PewDiePie stuff. On Twitter, it's just, and Instagram. Follow me on Twitter really for my main opinions, but I have an Instagram as well. It's at the Kavernacle. Pretty straightforward because it's a very unique name, so no one had it, so I just got to use it for everything. And then I also have a WordPress blog. I try and write an article about once a week. I've been slacking bad though lately. But yeah, go on that. Just type in the Kavernacle WordPress, it will come up. Have a read for some of my stuff. I've posted some essays on pretty interesting things as well. So yeah, it's all good stuff. But the main one, if you want to find me, subscribe on YouTube is the big one.
Awesome. I had Alexandria on here, which was pretty cool. So
Yeah.
I was able to talk to her about some fun stuff. But
it's amazing to have her on.
Yeah, all while sitting in front of my dresser. I don't know how like.
She's such a normal person, though. I think it wouldn't phase her at all. So I'm sure she was fine with it.
You know, I've had Congressman Ro Khanna 3 times, and he thinks it's so cool. He's like, I love that you have a dresser. It's so awesome. It's so authentic. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna keep it then.
I think it's just interesting to people like that. It's like the power of new media is like you just be in any room of your house and you can broadcast to people and get these famous people to talk about policy from like the comfort of your own home. I think it's quite interesting to everyone.
It is, and it's organic, and it's
exactly.
Stuff you won't find on TV.
Yeah, especially America corporate news. You won't find anything like this.
Thank you again so much, Connor. You guys check him out. I see all the love in the comments, and thank you. I'm feeling better. I'm trying to get over a cold right now that I guess I probably caught in the hospital. But yeah, I'm doing better. Thank you so much for all your emails and messages. Mike from the Humanist Report wants me to come on next Thursday or Friday to represent Bernie. So looking forward to that because he's my hardcore crush, and I'm probably gonna like fangirl like I did when he came on. So look out for that. I will update you guys with the time and whether it's Thursday or Friday. So thanks for watching. Everybody have a great weekend. Thanks again, Connor.
Yeah, no problem. It was great to be on.
Thanks. Yeah. Take care, everyone.
Right.